Well, everybody, thanks for coming today. Is the volume okay? Not too overpowering? Okay. I'm not used to hearing myself amplified. And I don't do this very often. And one of the things I remember from last time, which was 3 years ago, I was saving my thank you to the end, but then I may have talked a little too much and I never got to it. So I thought, well, this year I want to start truly by thanking this entire town and this event for what it does for the artists. I mean, it has grown me. It's like a little crucible of development, for a week, and it has grown me as an artist more than I ever could have otherwise. And so I wanted to thank, the founders, the Dills family, Nancy Tankersley and the galleries and the Avalon Foundation and Al and Jess and the entire staff here and the volunteers. I remember so many of your faces, and whether you've put in a lot or a little, I just want you to know how much it means to the artists. And so thank you. Thank you, thank you. I sort of feel like I'm always going to be a part of this family, and I couldn't be happier. So part of saying thank you, I wanted to bring in some anecdotes. The only problem with the event here is that we have to go home. And so I wanted to just contrast home versus here, okay? One day I was painting by my stream, which is kind of my muse, and an elderly fisherman strolled out of a meadow across the stream, and he called out to me. He said, "How did you get to where you are?" And it gave me a flashback to here, for a split second there. I thought, well, my parents, they noticed how much I loved drawing and painting, and they got me lots of art supplies, but I knew that's not what he wanted at all. So I just said, Water Street parking lot, second trail into the forest, the first one goes to a swamp, you don't want that one. And so, that's what he wanted. And another day there's a scrap metal yard near my stream at one of the spots, and it's remarkable how painting can really take you away, and what you can tune out, because the sound effects coming from a scrap metal yard, you can imagine what they sound like. And so I was taking a shortcut by the scrap metal yard, and an employee was on a break, and they said, "You painting?" And I said, "Yeah." And I turned my painting toward them. And I said, it's the midday light on the creek. And they said, "Well, something to do." And I said something, I didn't get angry. I just said something, "Well, I hope you have a good afternoon," and carried on. But as I was walking away, I thought, something to do? This is my reason for living, so there's a little misunderstanding. So that's home. But, normally it's I couldn't be happier. Like I said, my muse is my stream, and it calls to me all year long. And just to give an introduction, in case you're not familiar with me or my working habits, I'm 50-50 over the course of the year, plein air and in the studio. And both of them inform each other. The growth in the studio helps me outside, and the growth outside is essential for what I do in the studio. I couldn't do in the studio, or wouldn't even try to do in the studio, without my plein air work. It's all weather permitting, my plein air days. And, so it might be 2 days a week or all 5 days a week that I'm outside. But I wanted to start off where we left off. I was here in 2019, which seems like 8 years ago, but it was just 3. And this painting was in progress. I think I started this painting, this is actually in my own backyard. So it was not, sometimes you don't have to go far. But I started this painting up here because I just had the sense that I hadn't figured this one out yet. And for me, that's an important part of the process, that the sketching something like this it might have taken me 8 days to get this architecture figured out. And it did take a fair bit I had to give these branches nicknames to help me know where I was in this little world. But I was completely invested intellectually and emotionally in this painting like I do with all my paintings, but I didn't know it well enough yet. And that's the part of painting from life. It's not just the fact that nature's colors in person are unlike anything else, but it's also it's telling its story, minute by minute and hour by hour. And I'm there to listen. I'm there to listen. And that's a happy pose for me, or a happy demeanor to take in, is just, I'm not here to tell the world what trees look like. I'm here for this tree to tell me what it looks like. That's kind of my orientation. And after some number of times, I'll start to get a sense that, this light effect that happened here was it for me. And I think it was around 3:15. And so then but it might have taken me the first whole summer of working on it. I worked on it over 3 different summers. And it might have taken me that whole summer to figure that out. And I've learned that for me, it's easy to be patient, because that understanding what painting it's going to be is worth it. Because like I said, that's just an important part of the process for me, is which of these trees' stories to retell. So once I do figure that out, then I start noticing, well, what else is happening all the way around, and then just follow through on that. The temptation with this one was these spotlights are so compelling, was to just put everything in spotlight, but that's not how it is. And so I had to, have a little bit of discipline and just put the spotlights only where they actually were around that time. I was just talking to a friend about this upper left corner. I kind of saved for last. This whole quadrant was particularly challenging, and I think I'll just wait for that. And so I did this painting clockwise. I came down and then went up and finished up there. And the reason for that was there is a lot of crisscross branches that took a little extra concentration. But also, it's because the sun is actually over here. And so just because you're looking up so much, this stuff is actually underlit, which is kind of unorthodox, to be painting tree branches with the sun coming underneath them. Here, this is much more conventional lighting, but this is kind of unconventional. And so that was really the reason why, was I knew I could be confident about doing that once all this was in, because color is so relational that sometimes you can't identify the right colors unless you have a little bit of a world around it. And so by the time I got to the end, though, it was kind of comical in that, like, the last 2 hours of working on this painting, I might have put 3 dabs on it, I was just looking and looking and looking and looking. But it was a happy journey. It didn't really stretch my patience, just because I had loved this subject so much that it felt great to follow it through all the way to the end. All right.
I'm here to help you.
Oh, okay, sure, thanks. Let's see, the next one is this one. Yeah. So if you can just lean that would be great. It probably did, Dick. It probably did. I actually noticed that some squirrels also trimmed some of the branches. So, this is part of painting from life. And I've learned that, I've liked to say that I like to know, or at least have some awareness of what I know about a painting and what I don't know. Like with that first one, when is this painting exactly? That's a common question for me to work towards. And this painting, though, it gave me an awareness of another category, which is what I don't know, I don't know. And it's just good to know that that category can be there, because this threw me a couple surprises along the way. And I'm now less surprised when I'm surprised. It's just good to know that that can happen. So this painting was also in progress last time, and it's still in progress? What? That was 3 years ago. Well, so what happened was, similarly, I kind of started in the center right. I was working down. I was getting enthusiastic because I did get it finished over to about here. And I thought, oh, this is exciting. I might have just enough summer to finish this piece. Well, what I didn't know was we went on a family trip and came back, and a resident had built a rock wall in the stream right here. And, it was a genuine jaw dropper, to be just waiting to paint this natural, beautiful morning glitter on the stream, and it's like the Berlin Wall has arrived, and this is a still pool. And I thought, well, I guess this is why we take pictures just in case. I guess this is the just in case. And I did try later that winter to finish it with those pictures, but it was just, I can tell you, to have all this painted from life and the camera colors off on the left, it looked terrible. And so I just put it away in a quandary of what to do. Well, probably a year later, I noticed the man-made wall was falling apart, and I thought, there might be hope. And sure enough, it was a scoreboard nature event, and sure enough, this is what it looks like today. The more natural tumble has happened. You can sort of see there's this pile of rocks, that where the wall was rolled away. So I've been back at it this summer. And in the meantime, I did reconsider, and I restretched it with a ½ inch more here and an inch more there. And I'm really glad I did. I like the composition more now. There's two ways you can look at that. You can say, well, that's really an admirable dedication to the power of design and composition. Or you can say, what an idiot. And I like that first one better. But if any of you brought a magnifying glass, you can find the staple holes up the left side there. But, one of the reasons that I, paint outside so regularly is that the colors that nature shows us are so often unexpected, and it so often does not fit formula, and that's part of the fun, is just saying, what does that actually look like? And even when it's fun to ultimately explain it, why are the sunlit rocks here a different color from here? You can start to understand some of the natural science reasons why. But I have to say, that's fun, but even if I can't, I've learned to just trust. There is a reason that these sunlit rocks are darker than those, even if I can't explain it. Just trust what you see. And so I think we have a natural tendency to want to understand and rely to some degree on the formulas we've been taught of how things work. But I've learned to just, okay, if I can't explain it, just trust and try to paint it. And I actually thought about not bringing this because it feels like it's in a major ugly phase here. That's the area that's being actively worked. But then I thought, no, this is good. It's good to show the ugly phase because this is how I work. I don't have a method of, you always do this, then you do that, then you do that. My method is just trust, try, and adjust. And the way I work is I try to paint things the easiest way possible. I try, but for example, painting some of these leaves first or over the background, but then you sort of discover, well, the leaves aren't quite the right color and the background color isn't quite right either, now that I see them together. And it's my experience that I can't tell if let's say I paint this shaded water in the background, I try to get it to be the right color, but I won't know for sure until I get those leaves there, and then I can reassess everything. So that really is how I work. Like I said, I try to do it the easiest way, but I'm always knowing that I have to be open to that back and forth, because that's what I find is often that refinement, towards getting it as you want it to be. I try to paint to my heart's content, and boy, it knows when it's content and when it's not. But I did want to share that's the active process that happens really all throughout. And like I said, gosh, so many colors I would not have guessed at are all around this thing, and that's that's part of the fun.
Did you really not help that wall come down?
I didn't, and I wasn't so mad about it. Yeah. No, I never brought a hammer or anything, because it was adorable. That first summer I was working on it, 8 and 10-year-olds with their inner tubes are running through this scene. I felt like I was living inside of a Norman Rockwell painting, And so I think it was the dad wanted to make the channel deeper for the kids in the inner tubing. But the wall did come down.
Rob, why are the colors so much different now?
Good question. Good question. Good question. I think it has something to do with pixels or color management or something. Yeah, I'm not high tech. So these are 2 springtime paintings, and I wanted to share these. These are both somewhere in the middle, because the question is, so are there any downsides to working on paintings over multiple years? And with both of these, I had a rear-end collision with my own development. And what I mean by that is, in both paintings, I came back to the subject in March, and I said, oh my gosh, I'm seeing it differently now. I'm seeing color errors from the past that I didn't see before. And it was, I guess it felt good and bad at the same time. And with this one in particular, I actually thought about, should I start a new painting? But then I thought, this is actually a good underpainting for what I'm doing. This top section is the one that, and the left, has been reworked to my more apparently mature level of seeing, and so that's the part that's done now, and I'm going to be redoing really most of the water. It's just, I have a nickname for this painting. It could be called the painting he loved too much. It really is everything I love. It's almost a kind of a self-portrait, because it's, my birthday happens to be within the time that I'm working on it. It's bright March sun and moving water, and I just couldn't be happier. So I'm not trying to postpone finishing this painting. I do wonder, what will my life be like when I'm not working on this painting anymore? That's how much I love it. But no, there are other things to paint in March. I love the subject enough that I want to get it right. That's that, again, that guide of the heart. It knows when it's not happy. And when I saw how different the colors were from what I had seen them before, I knew I needed to do the reworking. It was almost humorous how identical the experience was with this one. This is the afternoon, And it's funny how similar, if you look at both of them together, how similar they are in terms of the sunlight on the water about a third from the left. And the reason is that the stream bends between this spot and this spot, and so you get this same light effect just 2 hours later or 3 hours later. But this one, again, well, actually, I had the year prior, as I was finishing up in April, because once the leaves start to grow on the trees, the understory greens first, and then the leaves grow on the trees and start to shade it. So that's when the season for this ends. But right as it ended the previous year, I looked at this green understory. I had painted the March version previously, and I said, wow, wow. And I got an uncomfortable feeling, which means that I've had an argument inside of myself and I just lost. Meaning that I knew I was going to next year, which was this year, repaint it with those April greens in. And so that's what I did. And also the same problem with the colors in the water on that one too. So I call this appointment painting, where I know where I'll be next March and April is at both of these spots. So I guess we're going through the seasons of the year here. So this is April or May and June. Now this painting, I have to say, this was a unique experience. By the way, I don't do only big paintings that take me a couple of years. I enjoy sometimes single week paintings, and I think this one was a week to a week and a half, something like that. And I have to say, it's almost slightly crazy. I hope it's not because I am, but this was so fun. It was literally, it feels like nature painted this painting, because it felt like a 100-meter dash in terms of, these flowers don't last forever. And there's even a great Latin phrase, I think it's Lilia ni semper florent, or something like that. So when it's a Latin phrase, we've known this for a long time. Anyway, I started in the center. I didn't do even much of an underpainting, because like I said, it felt like the starting gun went off, and I just started with these center blossoms, and I wanted to paint these buds before they'd opened, and then once I painted this section, then I painted these, and then these had opened by then and moved down there. And then after that, I painted the greenery around it. I came up with a little phrase to describe this garden painting from life, which is flowers first, leaves later. And so that's kind of essential with a thing like this. And fortunately, the leaves, there wasn't a lot of flower-leaf interaction with this one. I have had that. If there is, you can kind of sketch in the leaf shadows and things like that while the flowers are still there. This one, same idea, flowers first and leaves later. And I, however, came one flower short of finishing that. These bloom, the blossoms looked like this for a couple of days. But then we had rain and a heat wave, and they looked awful. So I just waited till this last May and painted this last flower in there. But there's nothing like, there's just, I titled this one Inner Glow because of the remarkable quality of light that they have. They almost feel like they're almost their own light bulbs. And so, and again, just seeing that in life is the only way to see it. Those colors are so subtle. I took photos just to see, and the photos, they don't look like this at all. So that's part of the draw to painting them from life. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. No, no, I can get this one. So my appointment is set also for September. This one is titled Summer's Ending Sparkles. And it's kind of that period of time between, it's September through October, before the real fall color happens. And one year I think I've worked on this one now 3 seasons. One year I was staring at this tree turn this bright orange, and it was so remarkable. But and a hiker said, "So what are you doing today?" And I said, "Well, I'm trying to decide what to do about that tree." And what I meant was, with a thing like that in life, sometimes these things can be so compelling that you want to paint them. I mean, it was some kind of, if I had to name the color, it would be nuclear peach or something like that. But this is where it can help me to title the paintings as I get them started, which reminds me of what is the point of this painting. And if I had painted that nuclear peach, it would have become, I would have to retitle it, Nuclear Peach Tree in October. But so that's where the title just reminds me, what is this piece about? And it is about that summer's ending period. And so that's all the colors are built around that. We've had a bunch of high water events that I've learned to trees grow, Dick, like you asked about, and rocks roll. And there had been a series of high water events, and I thought it was kind of cute that these 2 rocks here, they live somewhere else now because they were too round. Oh boy. The flat ones are still there, but the round ones have moved. Thanks. So this is more October, November, and its title is Autumn Rush, and it's actually the same spot as that one March painting, just looking the other way. The March painting is looking this way, and so this is just turning. And it was just so compelling. I couldn't resist this one. And it's somewhere, I would say, halfway. This is more figured out here in the middle, but the peripheral stuff I'm getting to, and you can see this is another one that I restretched. So what an idiot, but no, the composition was really asking for it, and I don't know how to avoid that kind of thing. I wish I had a method that I could share that I'll never do that again, but I don't. Because you can do thumbnail sketches, and I spend a lot of time with my viewfinder, but sometimes you just can't tell until you get the painting underway that, oh, it is a little cramped, here, it does need a little more space. But the thing that I can offer is I find that when you do restretch a painting, the bamboo shish kebab skewer is an excellent tool for trying to roll the canvas the other way on that folded edge. That actually helps it get flat again. So that's the best advice I have, is have some of those shish kebab skewers around. But this one, I find moving water, I think my stream has become my muse because I find it's just such a beautiful subject. And really, you have to see it, have to see it to believe it. Because cameras, they capture something different. They don't capture that sense of what the movement looks like. And that's what I'm trying to paint. I'm trying to paint the moving stream. And so just being with it enough to see how it moves is the reward. Cameras, they freeze things into all these funny poses. But watching it move is what I'm trying to paint. All right. Well, maybe can you help me carry one half? Here, I'll carry.
I've just been waiting to do that.
Sure. And it should lean against the easel. Oops, here, let me get it under this light. There we go. There we go. Yeah. Well, I apologize for the glare and stuff like that. And many people say, well, when you paint darks, always paint them thinly, and it's just not the way I want to paint. So what I do is I realize actually that my job isn't so much to make a painting that's easy to look at. My job is to make a painting that's worth looking at. So, if you have to go like this, hopefully it's rewarding enough, to be worth doing that. So this painting is a studio piece, and like I said, this is the kind of the other half of my artistic path. It's sort of the counterpoint to my plein air work, but I hope it feels like, well, it's all the same artist. I'm a fan of what that real communion with the subject matter outside does for me, but I'm also a fan of what I can do with more time to, approach something a little more meditatively. That's what the studio offers. Is a chance to take whatever time it takes. And that's, I guess, just my feeling about this art form, and it's beautiful how we can all approach it so many different ways. But that's kind of my orientation, is to painting in a way that gets to the same way that I see, which is my way of seeing is around kind of a relaxed gaze. And so that's what I paint toward, is that kind of relaxed gaze at the topic. But so the subject matter here is, the inspiration is inspired by my faith, and so it's titled Advent, which is that season in the Christian church calendar that is right before Christmas. And so I wanted it to be about that, but also about the world at that time. So I wanted it to feel entirely December. That was my goal, was to just have it breathe December. So I picked twilight because December is like the twilight of the year. And I picked first snow because sometimes December can look almost like March, but it's subtly different. But I did want to paint that first snow. One of the features of that is the meadow understory is still upright because usually by January, February, it's all gotten pushed down. And so I love that, there's many elements in the painting, but I love that quiet element of being able to see that in wintertime, there's still that memory of summer is still there. And I loved how the colors of the dormant plants kind of match a little bit the brocaded flowers on the cloth. I thought that was a nice tie-in. But this painting grew me a lot. I had never painted a painting that I cared about as much, and I'd never painted a painting quite this big before. Because this is an easel painting, not a mural. I'd done murals before, which helped. But it really grew me in terms of just trusting that state of I can only call it breathing and painting. Just breathe and paint. Because it can be, it was like being acclimated to a new level of loving a subject that created a lot of fear and anxiety, which of course helps you not at all. And so you just remember, like, oh yeah, just breathe and paint, just breathe and paint. And there's something liberating in knowing you can repaint something. And I repaint a lot. And again, it's following that heart guide of knowing when it's right and when it's not right. And this painting helped me really get more comfortable with knowing that if it's not right, just do it again. And so I've shared this piece with enough people and many people have said, "Oh my gosh, this warm glow here. It's how did you do that?" And the funny thing is, that part of the painting went so smoothly. And this is where it's fun, this art form, in that we're in control and not in control, because this part of the painting went so smoothly, but I had to paint these trees 3 times. So you might say, trees, Robert, you know how to paint trees. Well, I was not getting the color right. And I have to tolerate mistakes of all kinds in my painting, but I like to joke there are 3 things that drive my painting: the color, and the color, because that's how much I care about it. It feels to me like the color just delivers the mood and the feel of so much of the subject. So, for example, the biggest pain in this painting was I had finished the upper half and realized that the color transition between the sky and the trees was too warm. And so it was one of those painful episodes of going, gee, I have to paint that again. But I knew I did because I could not. I love this painting subject too much to just live with a mistake of something that I care about that much. So, that's many things throughout the whole piece are like that in terms of some of it goes so smoothly and then other things, they just take, the second time or the third time to get it right. And I suppose sometimes that shows, but honestly, I have found, there's real liberation in knowing you can either scrape or wipe things back and rework them. And maybe counter to some of the things we hear kind of mythically about painting, you actually can work freshness back into the painting. You can have it getting overcomplicated and have it look simpler and fresher again. Maybe it's the 3rd or the 4th time, and now it's fresh. So that's one of those things that I've discovered through all my attempts at trying and reworking. Yeah? Sure. Right. Well, I think, the simplest answer is when you know, you do know. And sometimes there's discomfort because you're not sure. And the best thing might be to live with the discomfort for a little bit and reassess. And sometimes it does help to get away from something and come back, in a day or two if you're still not sure. But sometimes that discomfort is because it's not quite right. And it does take that reworking, and it does take that assessment. I mean, I go through this all the time. I'll be painting and I'll say, darn, these even numbered brushes I think I have to use the odds, or the hair is too long, I need shorter hair. And I find that if I just get a little calmer, reassess the color, reapproach the color and just start putting two colors that are right together, and then a third and a fourth, suddenly the brushes are fine. Everything else is fine. But
that I'm looking at. I didn't see the brocade flowers on the picture, but I saw it. I said, wow, that, I didn't know. I took a picture and I enlarged it on my camera, and I thought, well, I didn't even see that there. And then the glow is so vastly different. And so, like the brocade,
right.
is it sort of like, well, in your mind, I'm going to make that brocade a little bit lighter?
Well, one thing I think that I see myself doing, and I'm constantly reminding myself that with our color work, and that when you're trying to get it to feel right, when we kind of just start with a certain amount of natural effort, what we do, I think our tendency is to stair-step color. Like, this is different from that one, and that's different from that one, and different from that one. When what's actually happening is one step is this big, and the next step is a little bigger, and the next step is much bigger. And that's the thing to remember. Like, for example, you know, the brocade tones and the robe tones are very close together, and other things are very contrasting. That's what I mean about colors changing from one to another, not being stair-stepped. And I hate to say it, but those subtle color changes take a little more concentration. I'm sorry. It's not my law. It's just the way it is. John? Yeah.
You said you rework certain areas. Now, I know you like to work wet in the wet, and do you have to make that decision while it's still wet, or if after it dries, do you sand it, or do you just work right on top of what you've already done before?
Right. It kind of depends on the amount of reworking, because if you do, and I do, if I know I'm going to rework an area, like I could have mentioned that glitter effect on the water in the summer painting, that's my third try. So when I know I am going to rework an area, I will scrape back, because some of the texture, you start to fight against it. And I have a wire brush that I use that I prefer to sandpaper, because the wire brush can go up and down on some of the texture better. But then you really, that's when I'm going to rework this whole area. Because anytime you retexture, it changes the color, and you can sort of get it back by re-oiling possibly a little bit, like if you're going to be retouching with just pieces. But I've found that there can be a little bit of those color changes of when paint is wet versus dry that gets tricky. So I've found that if I'm just doing spots, I'll just leave it if it's dried, and just paint those spots over.
So you want to maintain the texture. The initial texture, you might like the direction of the stroke in a way that affects the color.
Well, it's more that practical issue. Like if I'm repainting just pieces in here, if I do scrape or texture or sand or anything, it will really change these colors, even with lots of cleaning with solvent. If it's just color touches, I'll just go right back into it the way it is. I only sand or wire brush if it's like I'm going to repaint this whole section, which I did, but but does that help, John?
It does, but I'll corner you later.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm curious, in a painting of this size, do you grid it out? Like, do you actually do a grid, and then that's how you reference that area? Is that how you do it?
I didn't use a grid for this, but I did do a study, and that I would say that helps. It's essential for a piece this big to at least do one study. I actually did a couple studies of parts, but the way I start is by painting with washes, very thin down paint that you can move around with an eraser, paper towel eraser. And so I find that just looking at both my sketch to say, well, where is the center point, and somewhere around here, and then just work out by placing the things basically first and then refining as I go. And I find that building with an underpainting of a wash, it's kind of like you're taking steps toward the right colors, and that's helpful because I can't, on a white canvas, just put the right color for these trees down. Some can, but I can't. So I find that taking those steps toward it with colors that are more and more and more in the neighborhood is what helps land at those colors that feel like the right ones. Yeah, well, right, because it's, I prefer the word shapes to drawing because drawing implies that there's a drawing phase that ends and you can stop drawing. But it's, your signature has a shape. It's like we're working with shapes with all through the painting. And so, but that part is important, but I kind of tackle that with a wash painting to start, and then just keep refining those shapes as I go. Yeah. Yeah.
How much of a change in the color of the sky?
Well, it was subtle, but it was important enough to me. I don't know how to, say it was this big of a change or this big of a change, but it was too warm, and it helped. I could only work on this painting during winter, and it would help that I could go outside at twilight every evening and go, oh, yeah, it's more like that. Again, just because of how important color is to me, that it won't feel like it until the color feels like it. Yeah?
What's the light like in your studio? Do you have a big
Yeah.
window, or do you use artificial light?
I do the artificial light because the windows for my studio didn't quite work out for that, the dream Northlight studio thing. And I also find, I don't know if it's, being beyond middle age. When the light is too dim, it's a little too hard to see what the color work is actually doing. So right now I have the fluorescent cool light that mimics sunlight, the 6500K. And I have them, I don't have a real high ceiling, so I have them off to the side. You need a little distance, so it's not too much like this, where it's well lit here but not there. You need a little distance, so I found going off to the side. But I like to say what's that?
On either side?
Both sides, right. And one is a little closer. It helps to have one slightly dominant light so that you can see the texture. But I like to say, I think my studio lights are in the right place because I have moved them around like 4 times. So, yeah. Oh, okay. This is Saucon Creek, which is in it is in the Lehigh Valley. Yeah, yeah. And to my luck, it's spring fed, so it's pretty steady all year round. It has the high water events that come with any good rain, but it was funny. I encountered, coming and going with my canvases on a regular basis, I encountered this one person whose worldview was so remarkably negative. I had never heard quite the speech that this person gave me, but I was doing a fallen tree painting, and he looked at my painting and he said, "Yep, all the trees are dying. Yep, if it's not the lanternflies, it's the fungus, I don't know." But I noticed, and one of his comments was, "Oh yeah, the creek's drying up. Glad you got it while there was still some water in it." And the funny thing, the worldview was incredibly negative. It was a bit misinformed because I know my creek because, I see these rocks every day. And so I know, oh, the water is this much lower today. But the neat thing about the story was every time he looked at my painting, he'd smile. And I thought, well, there's the balm of art, going on the pain of the world. But the parting was funny, and I hope you don't mind me sharing it. He said, "Well, world's coming to an end. You can see it." And then he said, "Have a nice day." And I thought, wow, that was like 20 seconds apart. The world's coming to an end, and have a nice day. I had never seen those that close together before. But like I said, the good news was the smile. Every time he looked, I thought, there it is. Art has its purpose. What we do has its purpose. Yeah. Right. Well, like I showed you with some of the smaller ones, I do finish them in the same week or the same year. But I do have this handful of plein air paintings that are going through the year. I think it might be 10 or something like that are in progress, the plein air paintings. And they, I have subjects that are saying, when are you going to finish that one? Look at me in June, so I have like this waiting list of plein air paintings to do. And then I have studio paintings waiting. I'm more comfortable when I'm focused on one painting, but I've had to grow in, like with this one, parking it for 9 months out of the year and bringing it out. I forget now if it took me 3 or 4 winters to do this one, but I have others planned just like it. So I don't tend to like work on one painting in the morning in my studio and a different one in the afternoon. When I have a studio painting I'm working on, I tend to work on that one as it is until it's done. That's my inclination. The plein air paintings kind of force me out of that. Like, well, you can't paint November and January, so it forces me out of that comfort zone, which in some ways I appreciate. Yeah. Oh. No, that's okay. Right. Well, I do, because as a person of faith, it feels like this stuff is only here because it's been loved into being, and but I don't want to say anything that would upset anybody, to say that. But that is my experience of it. Is that there is nowhere where nothing is happening. It's all alive and it's all miraculous. And one of the things I love about my stream is I can call it my silly little stream. It's very humble, really, in person, and yet it's a miracle. That's what I find in it. It's anything. I just don't feel called to, travel to Yellowstone because anything that's there is here on a smaller scale, So I feel that same or similar spirituality, and aliveness, miraculousness of even very ordinary things. So, yeah. Yeah.
Appreciating this very much. As a studio painter, when you feel that pressure, you said people are waiting. How do you overcome this so that you can calm yourself and you don't have to have that in your mind because that could interfere with the painting?
Right.
How do you deal with that?
You mean when I'm outside or inside too? Yeah.
The sense of the pressure of people saying, when are you going to get done? Why take
Right. Well, I find my experience, we all talk about the mystical flow state. My experience is that it's pretty easy in and easy out. Yes, it is easy to get knocked out of that flow state, but it's also easy to get back in. And that's what I keep reminding myself of, just go to that happy place. It's very near. That happy place is very near where the world does fall away. And so that's how I deal with, I find any pressure that's coming to you from the outside, I know it's hard not to feel it but at the same time, it's really for your best interest to just go to that happy place, because that's where the productivity happens. I find that it's actually a very calm place too. It's funny how it's calm, and yet at the end of the day you're exhausted. So I'm not quite sure why the physics work out that way, but that's, and for me, my happy place, one of my entry points is what color is that? And whether I'm in the studio and looking at my palette and pulling and pushing the color one way or another, it's just so fun. And that's what draws me into it, is for me, it's my biggest headache, the color, but it's also my biggest joy, and where that zone happens. Well, yeah.
Of all the paintings you've done, which one do the people feel is their favorite?
Yeah.
This is what you feel, but what the people that come to see your painting, which one have they gravitated to the most?
Well, this one's pretty new, but I've gotten a lot of really good reaction to it. In fact, just touching on that spiritual component, I was invited by a friend at church to talk, and I brought just the study for this, and I had all my landscapes out, and people walked in, and they went to the study for this and said, "Tell me about this." And I just thought, "Oh, that's remarkable." So so far the reaction to this one is very strong, but I think it's different for everybody. I get different reactions. One of the things that I enjoy about this art form and being outside with, occasionally odd worldviews coming from people, but for the most part, people are so supportive and friendly and happy to see an artist. But one of the things I love is how they'll see that, well, that's odd, somebody's standing there painting, but then I'll see that it will help them look at what I'm painting. And it's this kind of like common denominator that we all share, are these kind of marvels of nature. And I really enjoy seeing the smiles that come on people's faces when they see that I'm painting, and so they stop, and then they want to look at what it is I'm painting, and it's like they go, "Wow, you picked a really good spot." And just that, that reaction is something that I really enjoy seeing. It's like people of all, ages and styles and everything. It's, our world home is something that we really have in common. Yeah. Yeah, I use oils because for me it's just the most comfortable, and it's the most malleable in terms of, it's wet and alive for some period of time. It can be reworked in so many different ways. It's my natural medium. My friend John and I like to joke that, the peace between oil painters and watercolorists is tentative, but it's holding together. No, it's just funny to me how everybody's personality is different. I like to joke that I'm sorry, John, I'm not smart enough for watercolor, but don't call me a traitor. But no, it's just we're all wired a little differently. And for me, oils, that ability to push, pull, and change, and to change spontaneously. So often, one of the things I love about the outdoor painting is that nature just throws surprise after surprise, and suddenly, wow, I didn't know it would do that, and I want to paint it that way. And on the canvas, you can just change it, right on the spot. So that's my little, support for the medium of oils, which is just my natural. Because you can sketch in it. You can sketch in it and you can paint in it. You know, I've exhausted many people's patience, and one time painting with friends, a friend came over that was ready to move to another spot. He said, "Rob, are we sketching or are we painting?" And that's because we do have different gears, you know, for both of those things. Well, if there aren't any other comments or questions, we can wrap up. But thank you, everybody, for coming. It's so meaningful to me to share with you. So.